to my channel. I'm so glad you stopped by today because today I've got another really fun project. Today we're going to be making a hybrid between a fox and a bat. Now I didn't just want to do a random mix of the two, I wanted to make my own creature with this idea. So I kind of just made a more fantasy version of what a fox and a bat would hybrid into. Also used a little bit more of a fantasy color for it, and I think it came out really cute. Anyways, let's get started. So for this project, I have plans on making more in the future. So I didn't really think about this as being a tutorial when I was sculpting. I was just mainly sculpting for fun, and I ended up really liking it and wanting to do a tutorial. So I didn't record making the clay piece, but I did record casting the clay pieces to make our molds. So I'm just gonna go over showing you guys me pouring the resin and different things like that. I'm gonna make a resin head, and I'm also going to be making some resin back feet. One thing that's really nice about using resin instead of clay is they're a lot lighter, so when you're making a larger doll, you don't have to worry about the doll being too heavy. And it just makes it a lot easier to build the wire frame, make it posable, stand up, and all those different things. Now for our molds, I'm going to be using just normal resin epoxy. I'm not going to use fast curing, mainly because I just haven't invested in buying that kind of resin. So I'm just using the same resin that I use to glaze everything to make my casted pieces. So in the future, I'll eventually get the fast curing kind, but right now we just have the clear kind that takes about 24 hours to cure. One thing that I am doing to make painting them later a lot easier is I am going to mix some mica powder into the resin before I pour it. That way I don't have to start off with painting something that's clear. I'll have some color to build off of. So the fur color for this piece is going to be a blue mainly, so I'm going to use blue, and I'm also throwing in a little bit of brown at the tip of the snout of the face. Now once my resin pieces are done curing and I can take them out of the mold, I'm going to go over them, just make sure I don't need to fix anything. One thing that I ended up doing with the back feet was sanding the bottoms of them nice and flat, that way they stood even and they wouldn't be wobbly or anything. And then for the painting, I'm going to start with the head first, and I'm just going to start adding some details going around the main features of the face. So I'm going to start with kind of a purplish, almost pink color to go around the eyes and the nose, mainly because this is very close to like a skin color, and the rest of the face we are going to be furring, so I'm not going to worry too much about that. But the details around the eyes and the nose, I really want to stand out and bring life to them. Now one thing you'll probably notice is the eyes are this really pretty glittery color, and I'm going to be really careful to not get my paint on them, that way I don't have to worry about cleaning it off later, because these aren't glass, these are resin as well, and it's just a little bit difficult to get the paint off. One thing that I did to get the eyes like this is I ended up casting the eyes first in a different mold, and then I took these little half circles and I placed them in the mold of the face before pouring the rest of the resin, and then they would just kind of hold in place after everything cured. Now if you want to do this as well, just remember when you're making the original clay head that you're going to mold, make sure that the eyes you're using at the time are going to be the same eyes that you want to add to the thing. So they need to be the exact same size. That way they'll fit perfectly into the mold and you can rest them there and you don't have to worry about them moving around or anything. So after getting a little bit of color laid down and I like how it's looking, I'm going to start adding more brighter colors, some white highlights, and then I'm also going to fill in some of the cracks and different things with a black to make a shadow. So for the white, I just kind of brushed over it very lightly to catch onto the more raised surface of the face, and then for the shadow portion I took a very small brush and just kind of very carefully painted the inside of the nostrils, the mouth, and just different things around there. And then for painting the feet, I left it pretty simple. The toes I wanted to make a bit brighter, so I'm going to start off with that same kind of purpley pink color. I'm going to go over that very lightly, add a touch of a highlight to that, and then the claws and the bottoms of the feet, I'm going to paint a solid black color. I'm going to let my paint dry, and then once it's completely dried, anything that I don't want to cover up with fur, I'm going to resin over again to help protect the paint. So I'm just going to brush that on, let that completely cure, and then once that's done curing, we can then work with our pieces again. And since we're waiting on that, that'll give us plenty of time to start on the sewing. Okay, so here's the pattern that I'm going to use to make our fox bat hybrid. For the shape of the body, I wanted to aim a little bit more towards the fox, except for the front limbs, which are going to be extremely large bat wings. And then on my pattern, you'll notice that I have a few lines sketched out, and that's because I'm going to be breaking this up into different colors of fur fabric. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to work on putting those pieces together first, and then we can assemble the pattern pieces. So for the side of the body, I want to have majority of the body blue, but I want to have a little bit of brown and white on the belly. So I'm going to sew all those pieces in place, and I did the same thing to the neck. And then once I have those assembled, I can then start sewing the neck fabric onto the sides of the body. Next, I'm going to take the inside portion of both of the legs, and I'm going to sew those onto the portion of the legs that are on the side of the body. I'm doing the legs a little bit differently than how I normally do them. So I'm just going to take this white piece of fabric for each leg, and I'm going to sew it in place. Then we're going to connect everything together with a white strip of fabric, which will be the belly itself. So this will give us one solid piece of fabric for the body. And then for the tail, I also have this broken up a little bit as well. I want to add a few brown stripes onto it. So I'm going to sew these stripes into place, and then I'm going to take the left and right side of the tail and sew those together and stuff it. Lastly, we need to get our bat wings put together. So the body of the wing is going to be a solid black fabric. This is a nice short but still furry fabric. I have it folded over onto itself, and I'm going to sew these two layers together and then flip them right side out. That way we have the fur fabric on both sides. And then the arm portion of the wing, I'm going to be using our brown fur fabric, and I'm going to sew these two layers together. I have a top and a bottom, and I'm just sewing down the very front portion of the arm. Once I have those combined, I'm then going to take the webbing of the wing, and I'm going to sew the fur portion of the arm to the very top portion of the webbing. Okay, so I think it's time to start assembling our art doll. So we have all the different pieces ready, all of our resin pieces have finished curing, and we can start putting everything together on a wire frame. I made this wire frame ahead of time, it's just roughly about the size that I need. We'll do some adjustments as we put everything together. So I'm going to figure out where the wires for the legs and arms are going to need to go, and I'm going to mark that out on my fabric and cut some holes to run the wires through the fabric. So I'm just going to slide the fabric over my wire frame, and then we can take our resined head and we can glue this to the wire for the neck. Once that's in place, we can then take the fabric for the neck and start gluing it around the base of the head. And then I'm going to start sewing up the back of our creature and stuffing the body. Once we get to the back legs, I'm then going to take our resined legs and we're going to add those to the wireframe as well. So I'm going to get those in place. I added some wires to the ends of these, and I'm just going to use the wires that we have on the wireframe and combine the two with a thinner gauge wire. So I'm going to wrap everything together, and then once we have those in place, I can take the fabric for the legs and glue them around the bases of our feet. Once we have our feet in place, we can then stuff and close up the back of our legs, and then we can take our tail, run it over the wire that we have for the tail, and then sew that in place at the end of the body. And then like the tail, we're going to take our wings and we're going to run those over the wires for the wings as well. Now I didn't close up the arm portion of the wing, I left this more open, that way it would be easier to add to the wire frame, and that way we can stuff and close everything up once it's put together. And then once we have the wings in place, our body is all assembled, and I'm going to take my hair trimmer and start shaping the fur and just kind of cleaning up the arms and legs. And then of course we need to add our giant ears. I ended up making these ears in a previous tutorial where I went over how to make wolf and fox ears. So if you guys didn't catch that, I'll leave it linked down below, and that shows you how I made the ears for this piece. Now these ears do have a wire frame inside of them, so they are posable and hold their shape, but they're not going to be connected to the rest of the wire frame. All we're going to do is we're going to take the base of them and we're going to sew them in place on the head. Lastly, we need to add our fur trimmings to our face and our feet. So I'm just going to take my fabric glue, I'm going to paint it onto the surface where I want to add my trimmings, and we're just then going to sprinkle our trimmings over the face, move them around with my tweezers until I like how they look, and then let everything dry. Okay guys, and here is my fox bat hybrid. I think it came out really cute. It kind of makes me think of a gargoyle in a weird way. I think it's mainly the face and the fact that I decided to glitter the eyes. It makes it look a little bit more like a statue, but I wanted to go for something a little bit different. And again, if you guys haven't seen the tutorial where I made these ears, I'll leave it linked down below so you guys can see that. There's also a pattern for sale in my Etsy shop if you want to do that. This little guy will also be there, so if you guys want to give him a home, check the links down below for my Etsy shop. I'm also going to have links to a bunch of different art supplies that I like to use to make my art dolls, so if you're interested in giving it a try, check the links down below for that. Now these are affiliated links, so they do help support the channel if you buy anything through them. Anyways guys, thank you so much for watching. Make sure to like, subscribe, do all that fun stuff, and I'll see you guys next time. Bye!